Welcome to the Edifice Complex, the property design and development podcast. Let your hosts Adam Muggleton and Robert Bean keep you up with who is innovating and doing great work, perspective on the adjacent possible, and challenges to the status quo.
Welcome to the Edifice Complex. I am Robert Bean, your co-host, unofficial mediator, here with my colleague, official agitator, friend and Yoda of most everything to do with buildings, Mr. Adam Muggleton. Say hello, sir.
Hello there. Hello. And independent Alberta, yeah. Anyway.
We're going to see about that.
We were just talking about that. Anyway.
40 years ago, our guest entered the Canadian Armed Forces and retired as a commissioned officer in the Royal Canadian Horse Artillery. We're going to have to talk about that. That's actually kind of a nice way to start your career. From there, he went on to earn his Bachelor of Science in Environmental Engineering from North Carolina State University, and then ratcheted up his career through the construction and engineering fields with some pretty blue chip names. And then as a follow-up act, starts a few companies, focuses on providing business case data to investors, pulling the trigger on property development projects that want to address environmental, social, and governance issues. And that really is the short story.
Wow.
Welcome to the show, David MacLean.
Yeah, thank you. I haven't heard it done that way. It sounds impressive, but
Yeah, who is that guy?
I was there at the time. It didn't seem that impressive at the time. It just seemed like a lot of hard work, but yeah, okay.
So, David, like many of our guests, like you've had several careers. There's just not one career in your journey. You've had several, starting with military service and now servicing stakeholders in the property development business. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, so I grew up in a very small rural community in Nova Scotia, Canada, and a lot of everything that I do has been informed by that experience. Nova Scotia is a very beautiful place to be in the summertime for all 3 weeks of it. But a lot of things were happening when I was growing up that I wasn't really aware of. And at the time, back in the 60s and 70s, the major industry was whale and seal processing. So, I'm probably the only one on this call that has ever eaten seal flipper pie. But there were other things. So all the things that were happening with the protests around whaling and sealing, there were other things happening. Clear cutting was happening around a lot of the forests in Nova Scotia. There was DDT was being sprayed to eradicate the spruce budworm infestation. There was deep sea trawlers decimating the Outer Banks for fisheries. And it's just been a paper plant opened up, a few miles away from where we lived, and fumes and pollution that were coming off of that were making people ill on a regular basis. As we drove to school, we'd have to go through that. So it was really interesting, and was kind of perplexed on how we were allowing all of this to happen. And when I graduated and joined the Canadian military, I was stationed overseas in Europe and had the privilege of being dusted when Chernobyl went up on exercise in northern Germany while my wife was in southern Germany, unaware of any of this happening. And I kind of came to the realization that, we could probably do better than this. And that kind of what precipitated my getting an environmental engineering degree. But I've spent the last 30 plus years working in the built environment to try and, bring to market or deploy in the projects that I was engaged in solutions that created better outcomes. And a lot of that's been focused on energy efficiency, and I'm a geeky guy by design. Engineer, ex-military, old white man. So I think I can fix just about anything. Right. And so that's kind of how I've got to this. I never think of all of these as different careers. They were really just, setting the foundation for me being able to understand systems better. I'm a strategy, systems, analytics type guy. And I like solving puzzles, and the biggest puzzle is why can we not consistently deploy readily available, mature, off-the-shelf technologies, policies, um, designs and investment strategies that create better outcomes. So my roles within other larger firms, and the reason I started my own firm was to figure out how to bring those solutions to market so that we could create places for everybody to live, learn, work, and play, and thrive, right? And I've been privileged to be able to work with passionate professional organizations and people in the last 35 years that align exactly with that. So I'm in a really interesting place right now, and I'd love to talk to you about how we might actually move the bar to create these places that we all want to create.
David, just for our listeners, can you give us maybe an example, sort of an alpha to omega example of a project that you might be involved in, just to put some scope around what you do?
Yeah. So, I just got news yesterday that one of our projects was awarded LEED Platinum certification downtown Houston. It's in the Texas Tower. It's a Hines LEED Platinum project, and so part of the services that I provided for that, not all of the services that I provided, but was to provide what we call impact assurance services. So we were hired by the architect, Gensler Architects, we worked with for a number of years, to provide the commissioning services, the indoor air quality assessment services, and some other services in a LEED project, help the client understand what the opportunity is. So around the conversations of what the opportunity is for an upfit to a building really focuses on how's that going to impact their bottom line? How are they going to be more prosperous? Yeah, they're in a smart building, but there's lots of dumb people in smart buildings. Doesn't make them any more prosperous. So, my deal is, if in simple terms, I have a really simple job. I'm a chief impact assurance officer, which means my job is to make sure that my clients don't spend any extra money on any sustainable, resilient, whatever it is you want to call it, over what the marketplace is doing from a lowest first cost minimum code perspective. That can't prove out that it brings them, it either creates greater asset value for the asset itself, or it makes the inhabitants more prosperous, and it potentially has a positive impact to the community in which the asset resides. So we provide oversight stewardship around things like the commissioning process, which on LEED projects, and I'm pretty particular, I only do LEED and other type of higher projects. The process is pretty, complicated. I'd say complicated. It's full engagement in articulating what the owner wants, articulating and stewarding that's put in all the contract documents, that everybody's aware what the performance outcomes are and how it's going to be measured is what we do, not just when you turn over the project for the life of the asset, and then provide the technical and design analysis around what's called the triple bottom line. What's the environmental, what's the social, what's the financial impact of any one of the choices that are engaged. That's what I do. That's what I did for that project. Now, with Gensler and with the other organizations that I'm engaged, and I'm also engaged with the U.S. Green Building Council. I'm one of the founding board members of the Texas chapter, also a founding board member of the Texas Sustainable Business Network. My role in there is exactly the same, right? How do we accelerate the deployment of these readily available, generationally responsible solutions so that they can be consistently deployed and create greater asset value for everybody concerned, better generational wealth. So there's some very technical solutions that are deployed to make sure that the right stuff gets in the asset, but also that it's going to continue to create value for the life, not just a one-time thing. So that evaluation process is pretty extensive, and it's part of what we do up front. We make sure that those solutions are articulated properly and evaluated properly in the process, and that they're proven out, not just at the end of the project, for the life of the project. So that's
so to some degree, if I was to put it in engineering terms, you're kind of like a regulator, because when I say regulator, in terms of regulation of, so there's somebody holding a purse with money that has an interest to develop a property, and to some sort of standard, whether, let's say, for example, LEED. So in between the requirements of the standard and the money is going to be this back and flow of ideas, money, all of the different challenges that go on. And to some degree, you have your hand on that, on the throat of that, and you're advising, actually, I would assume, both sides of the equation in terms of how to bring this together to optimize. Would that be a true statement?
Yeah, I haven't heard it quite put that way, but that's, I like to think of myself as an opportunity awareness guy. So, even though I gravitate just to LEED projects because they're more profitable for me and my clients, the reality it is that, our first analysis is not how we're going to get points into some sort of green rating system. Our first analysis is, how does this support the client's business case, right? Their current business model. And here's the reality. Sustainable buildings are much more valuable. If done correctly, the inhabitants are healthier, so they're more prosperous. And they're worth more long-term value. So if we do the business case directly, and if we're making the client more prosperous over the life of their business, that's true sustainability for them. They want to be sustainable, which means prosperous for as long as they can. What happens is you've satisfied most of the green rating systems like LEED requirements. So if you want that pretty plaque, you're probably 80% of the way there already, because you've incorporated things that make your space more more habitable. They're more prosperous. Healthcare costs are down. Retentions are higher. It's more efficient. Et cetera, et cetera. All those things that, from a technical perspective, we have known how to do for centuries, it seems. That's.
To put some perspective for our listeners, and again, these numbers vary, but I think it was the GSA that did some of the major studies, and is that for every dollar of energy, there's $10 of operating costs, but $100 towards salaries and benefits. So any improvement in productivity, reduction in illnesses, all of these types of things makes the energy cost look like belly button lint. Like, it's so insignificant relative to the human cost. Is that?
Yeah. So, part of articulating the value proposition to clients around all of these complicated technologies and policies and designs is challenging. So back about 5 or 6 years ago, we decided to create an opportunity awareness portal where you could build these marketplace representative, constructible, minimally code compliant models using life cycle assessment tools, energy analysis tools, all the things that we use to actually substantiate the opportunity. But we built these buildings to be, here's an office building, here's a school, and let's do an energy analysis. Let's make it 40% more energy efficient. What are the benefits of that? Well, here's the financial benefit to the owner directly from the meter. But here's also the greenhouse gases, the pollutants that have been removed, or the burden that's been removed from the community. So we're able to have more meaningful conversations about that. But if you compare energy efficiency, and I have an article that I keep threatening to post, that energy efficiency doesn't matter in commercial buildings. Because if it did, then tenants would be screaming for it. But to address your point specifically, in the P3i platform, we can put in things like better indoor air quality, better controllability of HVAC, of lighting. All those things have known direct monetization methodologies to be able to articulate what the value proposition is to the tenant business or to the school children, whatever in there. And when you check those different things out in our platform, that's exactly what you're getting. You're getting a 100-fold increase on what that impact is. And so that's the type of deep dive analysis that we can use with the tool to help show what the value proposition is in these models. And then all of that is pretty much scalable to the custom projects that we do with our clients.
So we're sort of, what I'm hearing is this is more of a thermal comfort discussion.
No, absolutely not.
No?
It could be all of it.
It's all of it. It's like an
lighting,
IEQ,
sound, air quality,
discussion.
all of
right.
Yep.
everything. Yeah.
Views, daylighting,
So biophilic design elements and all that stuff.
if it's a design element, I mean, think about, our interactions. I'm an environmental engineer, but, primarily focused originally on MEP design and project management and technologies. And, if you dug deep into my background, I was also a systems engineer for a major global HVAC manufacturer. So, designing systems and all of that stuff is nice. But at the end of the day, guess who's not in any of those conversations?
Yeah, the occupants.
End user. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, we used to say that for every unit of energy that gets converted and gets released into some kind of oxide into the environment is somebody avoiding stress due to environmental conditions. And that energy is actually the consequence of people avoiding stress. And if you have a bad building, there's going to be a lot of energy use, not because people want to use it, it's just that they don't want to be uncomfortable, visually, auditorily, thermally, air, respiratory, right? And so we've always promoted that occupants are the number one driver. They're the feedback loop, and that energy gets all the attention. But in reality, it's the consequence. It's not the problem.
Right. Yeah. The myopic focus around energy efficiency in buildings has really sucked all of the
Totally
out of the real opportunities that, like I said, these readily available technologies can do. I mean, we're still designing buildings as if there were pneumatic controls.
I'll bring that back.
We're putting the same number of VAV boxes. We're not giving any better controllability. The CEO in the corner gets the thermostat, or he doesn't even get a thermostat. He just gets a sensor. We don't let anybody know what the temperature is anymore, right? It's just a box on a wall. I mean, so when you start having these conversations and you realize, just to replace an employee, if you can increase retention, for example, right? Employees don't just leave that day. They don't wake up and say, okay, I'm not going to be there anymore. They've been thinking about it for months.
Yeah.
Their productivity has been plummeting. Then you got to do recruiting, try and find somebody, and then you bring them up to speed. So if you spend $100,000 on an employee, it's going to cost you $100,000 just to replace them. So why not take that money and put it into things like giving better controllability of lighting so their stress levels go down? They can actually be more productive, increasing the filtration on the air, giving everybody, if you look at the way office buildings are designed now, where are the offices? Right, which used to be on the perimeter of the building, right? All of the office people got views. Now, all those offices are on the core of the building, where everybody can now have view to daylight outside. Why?
Yeah.
Why is that? Because people are more productive. They're healthier when you do these things. And so we provide the quantification methodologies and the analysis to be able to do this. And so that's what the P3i platform does in being able to monetize all these things in different varying levels.
Yeah.
Who
was the guy that, sorry, go ahead, Adam.
The focus on energy, do you think there's a focus on energy because it's measurable and you can quantify it easier?
I think that's the number one reason. Yeah. So, if you can't meter it, you can't measure it, right? That's the thing that gets thrown around all the time. But the reality of it is that we have enough case studies that we don't need any more case studies to say bad air is bad for you. Can we agree on that?
Right. Totally.
Right. So the real challenge is just how bad is it, right? And the design points that we've come up with were really just to get the heavy lifting stuff out of the way, to say, well, here's where we think it should be. Here's the level of particulate matter. Here's the level of VOCs, et cetera, because we know that if it's outside of that, we can really measure harm. So, why aren't we designing better? Because we feel we don't have the substantiation to prove like a meter does. But we can. The reality of it is that, and this is what we're doing with our strategic partnership with USGBC Texas, is we're scaling up and refining those monetization methodologies so that they become more standardized. So if you design a building, and we're still designing buildings from an ASHE perspective that you only have to keep 80% of the people comfortable, right? So, I mean, the maintenance people don't realize that 20% of the people could be uncomfortable at any given time, and they're still meeting the design criteria. The tenant that goes into the business tenant that goes into an office building expects all his people to be comfortable.
Yeah.
So we've set up a solution where maintenance people are spending 60% of their time on hot and cold calls, because we haven't given the value of having everybody comfortable, which makes them healthier, which keeps them awake at their desk, right? The right amount of air coming in, measuring those things. We can measure air, we can measure temperature, we can measure humidity, we can measure TVOCs. All those things are measurable, and we can tie those directly to the prosperity opportunity of the occupants, be they school children, be they, lawyers.
So is there so you've built this tool. So tell me more about this tool then. And this is in alliance with the USGBC, or you did it and then?
So the tool, we use a number of global software partners that have developed life cycle assessment tool, One Click LCA. They're one of our strategic partners, and AutoCase, which is a software firm out of Canada that has developed bespoke type methodologies that are based on global recognized standards to be able to do these types of analysis. The P3i platform is not a design tool per se, right? I use those other tools along with other, energy modeling tools, et cetera, to create our reports. But I use those tools specifically to create these models so that we can have conversations around the order of magnitude benefit. Like you said earlier, spending $1 million on energy efficiency or $1 million on creating a space where the occupants are going to be more productive. We can have those conversations. So the P3i platform was meant to do two things, right? And it's free right now. It's accessible to anybody. It's what we're using to, one, create awareness around what the opportunities are of any design, any technology, any policy, or any investment strategy. It's to help internalize. So we only speak money, right? We want to get all this building science, green rating systems, master economics, life cycle assessment, whatever, out of the way, so we can actually, all of that stuff's used and it's all transparent in the platform and how we came up with this stuff. But we can have conversations around money, because if we're going to internalize why this is important to somebody, we want to be able to connect with them emotionally. And good or bad, everybody's connected to money emotionally. Yeah. And so, and from a project perspective, you are always going to have the money conversation. If you can think that you can bedazzle everybody with renderings and really speak gooder than me, then, you're kidding yourself. You're just putting off the money conversation. So let's have the money conversation up front. And so that internalization part takes us to the last part, which is pathways to action. So the platform, all of our collaborations are identifying best practice champions, identifying the marketplace visionaries that want to connect with others to help them emulate their superpowers. Mm-hmm. And so that's really what the platform is. It informs the opportunities that we're able to create with the other tools that we bring to bear and the processes, et cetera, as part of our revenue generating as a social enterprise. We are for profit, but our whole deal is to create pathways to get these solutions into the marketplace and help them realize what the real value they're bringing and get compensated for it appropriately.
Yeah. Going back, like it's a very unique thing that you're doing. As far as I know, I don't know anybody else that does it to that sort of scale where you're actually providing not only the philosophy behind it, but actual tools to make that happen. So good on you on that. When you were talking earlier about energy and comparing that, I was looking for a quote that says a lot, and it was by Upton Sinclair. And I don't know if you gentlemen know this. I'm going to read it. It is difficult to get a person to understand something when their salary depends upon them not understanding.
That's a variation on the Julius Caesar quote, right? For the money.
Yeah.
That's a challenge, right? I mean, from a career progression perspective, all of us technical folks, be they architects or engineers, even contractors, well, this may apply to everybody, but it's super important in a technical deal where you have your career progression is directly hard connected to the ability for you to understand what has to be done and how to do it.
Yeah.
So you're always going under some training or getting some certification, some renewal license. But in the built environment ecosystem, it's really super frustrating that none of the technology solution providers are able to talk about the money. Mm-hmm. And there's this hard disconnect or firewall between the money-making decisions, how money's invested, what they want the asset to do, and then the technical solution. So our deal is we're blowing apart that wall. We're making that information so readily accessible with our collaborations, and this is the goal. And this may be way out of the ballpark on your listeners, but this is happening anyway. If you think of all the transparency and accountability mechanisms that are being forwarded and are being applied because marketplace visionaries understand what I'm about to say, the decision-making process in the built environment ecosystem around sustainability, resiliency, energy efficiency is becoming democratized. And what I mean by that is the data is out there, more people have access to it, and they are understanding how it impacts them. And in the process, because they have access to this data, it gives them the same business case substantiated agency because they're using the same data that's used by investors to be able to say, here's the impact that you're creating if we do this. Conversely, and this is what is in our platform is a big part of this, if you don't deploy these generationally responsible best practices, you've decided, because all you have to do is meet the minimum mandatory regulations, you've decided you can burden us and just do what you want to do. So from a democratization perspective, call it what it is, marketplace visionaries understanding that they're going to lose some control over what they can actually do apart from what's happening from a regulatory perspective in the marketplace, that lowest first cost minimum code requirement. The marketplace is moving much further, much faster, because the tools are being developed at an accelerated pace. The ability to get access to the data is open to anybody, and AI is just going to kill this for the legacy decision makers. So those legacy decision makers that are clutching their current pro formas are in peril if they don't start understanding how to speak and understand what's coming at them.
If I could summarize that, when I go back and I look at my career, and I look at, if I had a stable of buildings, if I go back 40 years ago, that architecture is, in fact, a burden on today's society and financially on investors, because now they've got to maintain these things. The energy cost is really high. But what we're talking about here, if I understand, is that replacing or adding onto my stable thoroughbreds, the the modern day buildings that represent the future of where we need to go. And the more thoroughbreds we have out on the racetrack, people get to see that. They get to experience it. So the demand goes up.
Right.
So there's a huge benefit to that. Would that be a good way of looking at it?
Yeah, that's a great analogy. This goes back to awareness. There's what I call an expectation reality gap in a built environment ecosystem. The inhabitants of our buildings think that the professionals have looked out for their best interests and have developed places for them to live, learn, work, and play where they can thrive. And the reality of it is, all they've had to do, their maximum expectation is to squeak up and meet that mandatory minimum requirement.
Yeah.
And the gap between where that is and where the technological solutions, our ability to do better, is huge. And so we illuminate what that expectation reality gap is. But until the grassroots movement says, and it's happening because we also support tenants that wanted to know which building to go in, until there's more mass, and it's going to happen with a bang because of the access to data, like I said, then the marketplace is not going to change as fast as it will. That demand, Gerald Hines stood up in front of a conference some years ago and said, I will not build what my inhabitants don't ask for. And from a reality perspective, why would you? Well, the reality of it is that there's a lot more pressures than there were 20 years ago on these assets, because the assets are going to be around for a long time. And even if you build a building now, I say this to anybody, if you build a building to the current standards, that lowest first cost minimum code standard, you're guaranteed that the next day that you open that building is going to be a lesser value than a building that's being built after that. As a matter of fact, it could become obsolete pretty quick with the advancement and the recognition that we need to create buildings that are creating generational wealth for everybody, not just the asset owner, but the inhabitants and for the community in which it resides.
In many ways, it's like you're in the village of 30 people and everybody rides donkeys. And then someday somebody shows up with a stallion, on a fancy saddle, and now can outwork everybody. And all of a sudden the value of their donkeys is nothing.
Yeah.
And so now everybody's looking for the horse, right?
Yeah. Well, so let's just examine that analogy real quickly. So if you're the owner of those donkeys, why the hell would you want that stallion showing up?
Right. Yeah.
So in the built environment ecosystem, the legacy decision makers are like, hell no, I don't want, to be forced to do anything. Guess what? My property now gets evaluated through a different lens, and it's horrible.
Yeah.
We just built horrible buildings. I'm in Texas. Energy was cheap, so we didn't care about energy.
Yeah.
So now the buildings are being evaluated differently, and they're horrible, right?
Yeah.
So they got a lot of brown assets in Texas because of that.
The Edifice Complex will continue in just a moment.
Are you struggling with paperwork, spreadsheet overload, and project management? Then Blue Rhythm is the solution to help you. Streamline your commissioning and project management process. Go paperless. Increase efficiency and save money. Blue Rhythm is commissioning and project management software by practitioners for practitioners, adapting to your workflows and processes, and doing things your way. Blue Rhythm provides painless and fast onboarding by bringing your existing workflows, forms, checklists, and issues logs into Blue Rhythm for you. You can use their pre-built templates to customize your commissioning workflows. And Blue Rhythm can fully handle the transition from your current software platform. Blue Rhythm is secure, scalable, and reliable, backed by amazing support, and accessible 24/7 on any Windows, iOS, or Android device. Why are you still using paper and hard-to-control spreadsheets? Start your free Blue Rhythm account today at bluerhythm.com.
And now, back to the show.
Who's using the P3i platform at the moment? Is it like mostly new builds or existing building clients?
the P3i platform was designed just for P3i Global to have conversations, right? That was the original deal. It was just designed so that I could help my clients make better decisions. Since we've opened it up to basically anybody can go in and look at it, to play around, pick different best practices and see what the environmental, social, and financial benefit is and who benefits from each of those buckets. So anybody can go in and see it. But we're really using it as a community. It's an impact advisory community, and that's what we're calling it in this initiative in strategic partnership with USGBC Texas. Again, it's an opportunity awareness tool. It's not meant to be a design tool, although a lot of the outputs are directly and literally, transferable to any project out there. To actually bring in your own custom project you got to hire us, right? I'm not, this is not all free, but we recognize that what we recognized really quickly was once we could put the impacts in a dollar value into environmental, social, financial buckets, it was really easy then to also see who benefited from deployment of those solutions. And we could also quantify the burden that was remained on those different stakeholders if a readily available, generationally responsible best practice wasn't deployed.
So it's a burden imposition calculation machine. That's a lot to say. But, what do USGBC make of all this?
So USGBC has currently in version 4, and version 4 has been extended out to next June. It was going to retire this June. So in version 4, there are 2 pilot credits for triple bottom line cost benefit analysis. And we get hired to provide those analyses for our clients on LEED projects. But that information also informs the owner's project requirements upfront, which we help the owner develop so that they can see which solutions make the best deal. But LEED uses that technology directly for that. Life cycle assessment would have been points in the LEED version 4 rating system for years. LEED version 5, which we have clients that are looking at that right now, takes those triple bottom lines from pilot credits and moves them to regional priority credits for 3 credits. And it uses that process in a way that we've been using it for the last 10 years to inform clients up front, to pick different solutions to look at, and then provide an impact analysis at the end of it to show what you actually accomplished. And it's the same with life cycle assessment. The life cycle assessment has become a prerequisite, which means you have to do it for building envelope and structure and hardscapes. So the LEED recognizes the value that these brings, and we're engaged with all of the associations that are using these tools. Architects are requiring environmental product declarations, which are the bedrock of creating a good life cycle assessment and moving that into a triple bottom line cost benefit analysis. From a sustainability perspective, I've always said, things get serious when the accountants and lawyers get engaged. And I do, even though I've done a lot of energy and engineering modeling, I do more economic and business case analysis today than ever. It's tied to specific technical solutions that aren't breaking the physics, but it's all about the money. And the marketplace always wins. And the marketplace wins because they're talking about money.
Yeah, 100%. Money is the bottom line. Triple, quadruple, quintuple, bottom line.
We're scratching the surface. These tools are really rudimentary in a lot of ways. They're very basic. And, I love it when someone comes in and says, I don't believe this. I say, fantastic. Welcome to the conversation. Let's figure out why you don't believe that there's value in having healthy employees. Let's have that conversation.
So I'll take the role of speculative developer with twiddly moustache and monocle.
Your past persona?
Yeah, just my old job,
Military.
basically.
Had a long, curly mustache.
Yeah. So if I'm just say I'm in Houston, I'm developing AAA like high-end office. I'm doing it speculatively without any pre-let, no leasing. Heinz business model, basically, right? So the way it would work when I used to do it was you would go to the leasing agent's turn and say, like, what's hot? What do I need to have here? So where I used to work, they would say either do 4-pipe Falcon units or active chilled beams, LEED certification, you're done. You're getting the AAA tenants interested at that point, right? So, because I really didn't know who was coming in my building.
Yeah.
So I would pour money into the common spaces, the public realm, do the basics that the lease people gave me. And I'm selling the property based on status. And part of that is a lease certificate, but also like where it is, how it looks like. So the architecture mattered, the public realms mattered, and the entrance lobby mattered.
Yeah.
So that's it. Everything else is a corner shell. I didn't care. The minute I got that tenant signed up, thank you for the money. I will now securitize that and borrow another load of money and do another one. And so how do you sort of get around that approach with this?
Yeah. So I've been privileged to, have clients that the air is pretty rarefied, right? I recognize that, right? And part of the reason I started my own business is because, all of these sustainability things that we were doing, because we do sustainability consulting also, none of these solutions were making their way out of, Class A office buildings or affluent school systems or large urban areas. And the reality of it is that, let's take Heinz, for example, right? Heinz is headquartered here in Houston. And when I moved back to Houston in 2004, Heinz was not doing LEED projects, and very few people were. We were still considered tree huggers. And, we went, and I wasn't in the team, but, I was part of the chapter at the time.
Yeah.
When we went to Heinz and proposed LEED certification, they looked at it and said, well, we do 80% of that, right? Yeah. So this is like a no-brainer for us. And so Heinz just decided, well, every building is going to be a gold building. I think in 2009, they decreed that. Yeah. So, when a Heinz says that we're going to build a building and everyone's going to be green, everyone's going to be a gold LEED building, the rest of the marketplace is like, what the hell does LEED stand for? Right. What is it? Right. So they drove that. But the reality of it is that it's still just a business case. And today, when you do a Heinz or any other building, the architects is told, and I think Heinz has moved that up to platinum now. The architects' marching orders are simple. Get me that plaque for the least amount of money you can.
Absolutely. That is 100% the project brief. Yeah.
What it is. So it's a long answer to your question is you got to know where the marketplace is now, but you also got to know where it's got to be in 5 to 7 years, which is the typical hold.
Right. So let me put a pin in that. When I used to lease my buildings, 20, 25-year leases, full and repairing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So again, this is maybe a UK thing. I know leases are a bit short here, but let's say it's a 10-year lease. If I got a AAA building, I expect to get a long lease out of that. Yeah. And then I forget about that thing, and that money is coming in every month, and I'm securitizing it and rolling into the next one. Right?
Yeah. No. I don't disagree with that. The things that we do, though, to properly do a LEED or a sustainable building is you harden that with respect to, what has to happen with the long-term, usability of the systems in the building. You put the right people in there. And I'll go back to, just the industry as a whole. You're looking at from a very specific siloed perspective.
Twiddling my mustache right now.
Yeah. And we're not going to change. We're not going to change every one of those.
No.
We're looking across all the silos, and all the silos speak money, right? And they're all trying to get as much of the money that's available from that pocket in their silo all the time. Let's just be realistic about this. But if we can create an asset that actually has greater value at the beginning, there's a bigger pot for everybody to get money from. And if the tenants of the building are going to pay more because they're going to be more prosperous. And this goes back to, how do we know they're going to be more prosperous? Because we're going to continue to monitor and measure the indoor air quality. We're going to, make sure that we have properly trained maintenance people that are not focused on hot and cold calls, are making sure that the space that they're in is optimized for that business's prosperity. That's a huge change. I don't know what it's like in Europe, but here in North America, building engineers is not a career. I'm sorry if there's anybody's on there.
It's a cul-de-sac, right?
It's not a career. You're hot and cold guys, right? You're fix and failure guys. That's been the business model. Well, that's not sustainable, and it doesn't create long-term asset value. If we can show what the value is of being in a space that's monitored and can tell you when it's out of compliance for the prosperity of you being in the space, then we create real trained maintenance people that their role is to make you as prosperous as possible, and they can only do that if the space is continually optimized for your team.
Yeah. You can only do that if you're measuring like VOCs, humidity, temperature, obviously, VOCs, noise levels, CO2 levels. That's where you've got to dashboard that and have a database building, right? But I mean, the US market, fun fact about Heinz, by the way, that the original Mr. Heinz decided was a mechanical engineer, just saying, best people ever. But that aside, the US market is quite unique because it's a big market and it's highly liquid. But from a property point of view, you have a lot of campus type build to own and operate clients like universities, school boards, right? Whereas in other parts of the world, it's a lot more speculative. So there is a speculative market, in downtown Houston, downtown New York. Sure. But, if you're like University of Austin, you got 100 buildings or something, so you can take the long-term view there, and you've probably got your FM in-house at that point, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the people you're really speaking to, I think, here.
Yeah. So, obviously municipalities, if you think about municipalities and same with the campus that you're talking about, they finance, they build, they own, they occupy, they manage, right?
Yeah.
And from a taxpayer perspective for municipal projects, to be able to show the benefit of and the stewardship of those taxpayer dollars is critical. And so we bring all of those services to bear, and we steward the project to make sure that all of the things that are in there are done, and we measure the performance at and for the life of the project. Those are assurances to a municipality that they're doing the right stuff. And it doesn't happen all the time. They're constrained, but this lowest first cost minimum code mentality is what we're really up against.
Yeah.
Ecosystem. And it's what we address head on. And as a retired military officer, from a strategic perspective, or strategery, as we say here in Texas, from a strategic perspective, understanding that obstacle is critical to understanding how the marketplace will or will not move, and who has control. And from a legacy decision maker process, sustainability looks like it's taking control from them, and it looks like it's taking money from them. And so what we're able to show is that we're creating greater asset value. This democratization of the decision-making processes happen anyway. And our marketplace visionary clients want to be out in front of that and use that to their advantage and not be blindsided and create obsolete buildings.
Yeah, you're building in competition into the property development business, really. Mm-hmm. And you're providing, and the offering, of course, is better environmental quality, higher productivity, better health. These are all things that are important to society. Yep. Over my career, I've taken photographs of examples of the donkeys in the community, And you can see that when you're walking down the street. You know, if you've got the trained eye, you're looking for the tinfoil on the windows. You're looking for the thermostat behind the locked box. You're looking for the duct tape on the diffusers. Yeah. If America and when I say America, Canada, United States, and Mexico, if the citizens understood, like if you took a time-lapse photography of an office space and watched how much time was wasted and people getting up on their desks on a Monday morning with a roll of duct tape to tape up one diffuser in one office space, and there's millions of office spaces like that, or hanging bags of ice over a sensor because they want to trick the air conditioning system to shut off. We're talking lifetime of wasted time trying to adapt to bad environments. It's a huge, huge figure.
It is. Yeah, and we've monetized that across Texas. We did an analysis and stood in front of the state commission just to quantify, because there was a bill that we were supporting just to support measuring the particulate matter in schools, right? There's no school in Texas that's being built or ever built that it needs to disclose or measure what the particulate matter is. They just change filters whenever, who knows when that happens. And that impact was billions of dollars a year on lost productivity, on ability for students to learn, et cetera. So we these same processes, these same analysis capabilities can be used in that process. But yeah, you're absolutely correct. The order of magnitude of the opportunity to do things and support energy efficiency. We can do better lighting controllability. We save more energy. We do better HVAC controllability. Guess what? We save more energy. We do better CO2 control because most CO2 sensors are horrible and they they typically under or over ventilate the space, right? But if we control those, we have better energy control. These are all energy saving things that we put in projects, and I'll go back a year or two to recommission the project, and they've all been overridden or their sensor calibration is off. And because nobody has equated these sustainability issues, these energy saving issues, to the impact they have on the inhabitants in the space. And this is why you're not allowed to know what the VOCs or even temperature, humidity are in the space. Most of our projects measure all of that and tie that to dollars lost, right? Yeah, that's the deal.
One of the few good things that came out of the COVID thing was everyone got one of these CO2 monitors, and it was universally horrific wherever they went with those things. Right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
It's horrible.
I got one. Yeah, I got one in my house. So
one of these.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Take that on an aeroplane and know you're in that tube for 10 hours. See how that feels.
I've given away so many of these things to friends and family, and then it also CO monitors too, like the aircraft, the low-level CO alarms. They're not CSA or UL approved, but they're used in aircraft or anyway piloted transportation where life safety is an issue. Yeah. They alert at a very low level. They're expensive, but they save people's lives.
The solutions are there, right?
Totally.
One of the things, speaking about air quality monitors, it shows you what the parts per million of particulate matter and meter, whatever milligrams per meter cube of TVOCs. Nobody can relate to that, right? So our deal is we take that data and if it's within design, it's a green thumbs up, right? Yeah. If it's not in design, it's a red thumbs down, and we can show by daily the amount of money that the client's losing because their staff is not as productive.
So I'll get my twirly mustache on here, right? If I was a developer, I would never, ever let you monitor that and publish that to the occupants, ever, as long as I lived, right?
I got to show you this. This is my new environmental sensor, and it does shortwave, long-wave radiation, humidity, air velocity, VOCs, dry bulb temperature, and it's the sensor reads every 5 seconds. Okay. And so you can do stratification, all that kinds of stuff. So, Adam, you would say I would not be allowed in your
dude, you would be banned from my buildings if you burned up that.
Yeah. But you're right. Dave, the instruments are there. The technology. We don't have a technological problem. We don't have an instrument problem. We
have a disclosure problem. So this is my answer to a lot of problems, right? If you collected all this data and made it open source and public, the nerds would descend on it and start shaming people. That's what you need.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
That I'll use whatever. I'll use peer pressure. I'll use shaming, and we're doing this, right? I go back to Paul Newman had a movie called I forget what it was, but it was No More Secrets. I forget what the movie was, but there's this software, and then there's been other movies that use the same thing. Yeah. You develop a tool that just makes no more secrets anymore, right?
Yeah.
And if you think about the P3i platform and how we're rolling this out, now we're teaching people how to use these tools that I talked about, AutoCase and OneClick, et cetera, better in a business case scenario, not just in a technical scenario, but with this access of information and people knowing, because they've trusted these professionals to take care of their welfare, and that's not been their driving deal. They got to, their businesses, they got to make margins, they got to, meet that lowest first cost minimum code. That's it. They're not obligated legally, morally, monetarily to do anything above that.
Yeah.
So,
look, as a libertarian, it pains me to say this. We need legislation that says we got to record this info and make it public, and then let the cards fall where they fall.
Even I'm from Canada, and I believe that regulations have their deal, but I'm a firm believer that if we can show the business case, that you'll get people demanding to know.
No, you're ignoring human nature there, David. Yeah. You're ignoring human nature. The biggest transition in my professional life was I went from being an engineer to property developer. And I'm not the fastest guy in the world. It took me 3 months to realize that I saw a building and property people see financial instruments. Mm-hmm. That's it. That building you see is a financial instrument to the people that matter. Yeah. And that is it and all about it, I promise you.
But I'll let me just say, I agree with that. But if you're going to change things from a grassroots perspective, you don't do it with technological information. You do it with emotion. And we can connect with emotionally with people when they realize that they have, given their trust away to professionals that supposedly and ethically were responsible for making sure that their best interests were taken care of. And that's not the reality how the built environment ecosystem works. But the good news, there are lots of professionals in the built environment ecosystem that want to do that. They know what to do, they know how to do it, but they can't articulate the business case why. And so we focus on the why. Every day is the why. Why would you want to do this from a business case perspective? Why would this technology matter? How does it impact means and methods of construction? How long is it going to last? How's it going to make the space more attractive? How can you get higher leases? All of those things are what we're able to analyze and have meaningful conversations. And if we can make that completely accessible, and this is what we're doing with our strategic initiative with USGBC Texas, is we make it so accessible from a technical perspective, from a economic perspective, and we make it so impactful that everybody can internalize what is being made available to them to see. Then our deal is that these processes should be used and will become used in some very basic form as a minimum, or otherwise you're viewed as shirking your fiduciary responsibility as a project creator.
I'm going to change your business here. You can pay me at Christmas. Here we go. So, the most powerful force in the economic world is consumer disobedience. Right. So the AAA office market is sort of a market I know pretty well. I'm not too calibrated in North America anymore, despite being Canadian, but I'm still calibrated in the UK and the Middle East, right? The AAA office space actually is pretty okay, right? And the reason it's okay is young people will not go work in shitty offices. They will work at home or just not come and work for you, right? So that's consumer-driven disobedience. I will not go in this office, but I will go in that office. Right. So if you could somehow make that cohort of people understand what you're talking about, you will win, because they will be the signal to the developer that I can't lease this B space, I need this AAA space. Every new AAA office looks like a Googleplex right now. Looks like a playground for fucking children, because that's what the tenants want.
Yeah. And guess what? You can take these brown assets, and they can still be energy horrible, and turn them into very productive spaces for the inhabitants.
Yeah.
Right. This is where this concept that everything's going to be connected to energy efficiency when you upgrade a building. You don't have to, right? If you can show that and prove through these technologies and through the analytics that we do that it's attractive. They got views, and a lot of these old buildings have views. You just get rid of the external or perimeter offices. You can turn them. You can upgrade the HVAC systems for, contaminants and for controllability. It's not that difficult.
No, I think the retrofit market is actually going to be a very buoyant place.
Oh, yeah.
It's 5 to 10 years, because there's a lot of 1980s building stock that's structurally fine. It just needs that uplift, right?
Well,
so
it's the crappy buildings that you did, Adam.
Pretty much, yeah. It's all my sins coming back to revisit me.
But everybody's myopically focused on energy efficiency. I think they're going to upgrade a building. They got to think, well, we got to redo the skin, and no, stop.
Look, some shading or grease layer or film on the windows, rearrange the thing, upgrade the space. Done.
Flowers in the lobby, you're done.
Yeah.
There's in many ways. Like when the Rocky Mountain Institute built their new campus, this is going back now 10 years ago, but, the whole building design, like the macro design of the building was for low temperature interior spaces, like 60 in Fahrenheit, 62 degrees Fahrenheit. But everybody had a personal control system at their desk. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you could turn that system on and off to your own delight, right? Yeah. Well, if you just took that, but the building itself was a good building, but if you take the principles, well, crappy buildings are going to maintain 62 degrees Fahrenheit anyways, like the buildings you built, Adam, right? Yeah. So you don't have to change the enclosure. All you have to do is give people personal comfort systems at their desk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we upfit the MacLean office building here in Houston, Texas, and we used smart diffusers on every floor.
Yeah.
So that gives individual controllability to office spaces and better controllability in open spaces within 1 degree from floor to ceiling, 1 degree. Mm-hmm. And because they're smart diffusers, the velocity is always the same out of the diffuser. So you can actually downgrade the amount actually allows you to downgrade the amount of outside air that you bring in, because everybody's always in the breathing zone. So if there was an efficiency from a design, there's a controllability issue, and it is by far the most requested space for government employees that are still around in the U.S. that want to go. That building has the highest rating with customer satisfaction of any building.
Oh,
and
cool.
That's a retrofit, right? And it's not that difficult. It's all of these things are technologically advantage. You don't have to do an underfloor, which is Heinz standard. They do underfloor.
Yeah, they pioneered that in North America. Yeah.
All displacement.
Yeah.
But here's another simpler thing, right? If you own a whole floor of a building, and if you're not tied to this concept that everybody's got to be like in a team right next to one another, they just have to be co-located on the floor. With existing technology and the fan barrier boxes that you can have one corner of the building at 75. You get one at 74, 73, 72. And people just get to choose which space they're in. You've accomplished the same thing with the existing system. So, just rethinking this is, just a little bit of smarts.
Okay, we're coming up on time now. We got a sort of time constraint here. So we finished with a couple of quick fire questions. My question to you, and you've got to give a short answer here, is how did you go from being a horse soldier to an American in Texas?
Oh, wow. We were about to retire. We were in Manotick, Ontario, and it was 40 below at night for 2 weeks in a row. My wife was about to give birth to our daughter, and I was about to retire from my engagement with the Canadian military. We wanted to be warm.
That's a good answer. That's enough. That would be enough for me.
So we moved to Houston. Yeah.
So you went to one of the warmest places with all the humidity, right? Okay. Awesome.
It's sad because growing up in Nova Scotia as a young man, I thought, man, someday I'm going to move to Maine.
Yeah, that's just like going from the dining room to the lounge. There's no real difference, is there? If you
You'd be surprised. A couple extra weeks of summer makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, David, if you had to, take the hand of a project represented by a certain purse of money, and you needed to simplify the story, in a sentence or two, how would you lead that money through the journey? What would you say to those holding the purse strings?
So first off, I don't think there's any expert out there that can foresee the future, right? But the trends are that the real estate you build today will be viewed under a different lens in 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Definitely in 20 years, right?
Yeah.
So why not spend a little bit of time exploring what those risk opportunities or analysis are, right? Because this is really, it's a risk evaluation process. Yeah. So spend a little bit of time to, look at the marketplace right now, because you're going to have to get people in the building now. But if you're going to be holding this, whether you want to or not, right, look out. So the first deal is, again, I don't understand your business. What's your business? What are your drivers? What are your hot buttons? I can tell you all kinds of technological stuff, and I can baffle you, with all of the stuff that I've, unfortunately got in my head. But it's of no use if it's not going to, augment your business model. So what's your business model? What's your business model? Let's look at what the opportunities are. At the end of the day, you got to pick what is best for your business model. So that's the start of any of the conversations I have with my clients. Some come to me, well, I need to get LEED, gold. I'm like, why? Why do you need to get LEED gold, right? Do you have some passion for energy efficiency?
That's because the guy down the road's got it, and I want it now.
So we just walk them through the process. The process is pretty simple. Help me understand your business priorities, where you think you're going to be in 5 to 7 years, how this asset's going to help you or hinder you, and I'll tell you, from our perspective, and I'll show you the data, and we can look at alternatives. And then we'll make a decision. So we're going to steward to make sure that all of those things are internalized with respect to the design team. We're going to oversee the construction, and we're going to make sure at the end of the day we're checking the performance that it's meeting your expectations.
Yeah, that's great. And why I say that's great is because it's a philosophy that I also share. And as Adam knows, we've just spent 2 years renovating, restoring an old home.
With love, right?
With love and money. That's the same thing sometimes. And but the objective was to get the home ready for the future, so that when codes finally caught up to the home, that when we go to sell that property, it wasn't going to be judged as an outdated building, but in fact, still a modern building meeting current codes. Yeah. So we are at least 2 to 3 code cycles ahead, and that was done deliberately. That
takes money. It
takes money, and you have to look at it from a long-term perspective.
That's called cathedral thinking. You're building something that you might not enjoy.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's very true, actually. Yeah. Right. So so thanks for sharing that. That's good.
Okay, man. Well, look, let's wrap her up there. So. Thanks for coming all the way from sunny Texas.
Yeah, thanks, David. Appreciate it. Yeah, much appreciated.
Really good.
Yeah, it's been enjoyable. Anytime.
The Edifice Complex will continue in just a moment.
Are you passionate about the built environment? Do you want to learn from the industry's most inspiring, intelligent, and accomplished professionals? Then the companion to this podcast, Wisdom of the Property Crowd, is just the book for you. From Edifice Complex podcast interviews, this book distills the critical thinking, insight, and ideas of some of the property industry's most accomplished and respected practitioners. Each chapter is a synopsis of an hour-plus interview, capturing the takeaways and insights, including diagrams and images, to help explain concepts and ideas. There's also a brief bio about the interviewee and a QR code linked to the podcast episode for those that want to explore further. These are the mentors you wish you had in college. Wisdom of the Property Crowd by Adam Muggleton. Available on Amazon worldwide.
And now, back to the show.
Awesome having David on. There's not a lot of gentlemen, ladies that do what he does. And that ability, and what I like about him is his history, how he got to where he is today.
Yeah.
Coming from a military background, in your brain, you're trained to look at the world from a completely different perspective.
That's institutionalization, right?
Yeah. And then add in the engineering degree.
Yeah.
Right. And then throw in the business side. He would be a huge asset in the property development world for those that want to take their money through that journey, in terms of looking at LEED, all these other programs. He would be an excellent person on your team for sure. And the question I asked them, about how do you take that purse of money and what do you say? And I totally believe in that philosophy. It's a bit of a risk. You could do nothing with an asset.
Yeah.
Right. And just sell it at some point and, hopefully there's a return on it. Or you can bump it up and make it more valuable at the time of the sale. But that takes some vision and,
it really
and some
does.
risk.
Yeah. So the concept he's talking about, which is like begin with the end user in mind.
Right. Yeah.
40 plus years in, I'm still flabbergasted that not many people have that conversation. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah. Totally.
Even house builders don't think like that. They just try to build the best house they can, make it as sexy and cheap as possible, which are completely incompatible.
Yeah.
Objectives,
totally.
Right? So, this is, I know it sounds ridiculous, but this is an unusual perspective to take.
Yeah.
Right?
It is.
When you say that out loud, it sounds stupid, right? But it is. And it's a form of cathedral thinking as well, right? Because you're trying to you as a developer, you're not necessarily going to get a benefit of that. Your tenants are, or your users are, right?
Yeah.
So there is a mindset shift that has to happen there. And I do think this comes down to being able to talk about that. We don't talk about that in society in general, right?
No, we don't. That's right.
It's like we tend to just go out of buildings and suffer them, right? We take what we're given, right?
Yeah. But I see the changes. I do actually see a crack in the wall, and people are starting to see that. And I think when I think of some of the, the thoroughbred buildings that are in inventory now, spread around the world, actually, that there is demonstration of the consequences of better design, more holistic designs, and then but also, as David points out, there's got to be a financial implication. And I think that the people are starting to see that. And you actually brought up earlier on about, the people that actually own and operate their own business, as opposed to, investment, where you don't really care who's in there. You just want the cash flow, right? So as
America is quite unique with the amount of campus type buildings and school buildings. And the GSA, the General Services Agency, right? It's the largest landlord in the world, I think.
Yeah, it's massive.
Thousands of government buildings. They all fall under this build it and run it model, right?
Yeah.
So that's probably the elephant to try and tackle, right? The GSA.
Yeah.
But just most university campuses in America are just huge. Yep. It's not 2 buildings and a toilet. It's 100 buildings, 50 buildings, 200 buildings. The University of Toronto, 174 buildings last time I was involved there. It's probably more now, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's a small economy all on its own, right?
Yeah.
That's like a moon sort of orbiting another planet. But it is interesting. I do feel we are moving in the right direction, but because I'm an impatient asshole, it's never fast enough for me. You know what I mean? How do you demand more, right? This is a question, really, right? How do you demand more? And the only thing I can say to us last time is I've seen office space go up in quality because the tenants are demanding it. And what that looks like is young people won't go and work in these old shitty offices.
Yeah.
Unless they absolutely have to. Some people have to, right? But given a choice, they don't.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing. The luxury building market is like the luxury car market. You need the Tesla Roadster before you can get the Tesla saloon, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. That's really what we're talking about here. But it's pushing that saloon car. So there's too much focus on the Tesla, not the saloon at the moment. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
As an analogy, I've been beating these to death. Anyway, mate, we better wrap up. So listen,
all right.
Have a good one. See you on the next one.
All right. Cheers, Adam.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
You've been listening to the Edifice Complex podcast with Adam Muggleton and Robert Bean. See you next time.